20 that we know of, and there are many more conditions that we suspect is autoimmune, but we're not sure yet, okay? So you can write in the first blank, there are over 120 named autoimmune diseases, and an estimated 50 million Americans suffer with autoimmune disease. Now you might be saying, is that a lot of people? Well, put that in perspective. Heart disease, I'll put heart right here. Heart disease is 22 million. So you hear about heart disease all the time, right? Everybody's, it's like the #1 killer, but it's only 22. Now, how about cancer? Cancer is 9 million. So if you add up heart disease and cancer, it doesn't even add up to the number of people that have autoimmune disease. So that just tells you how prevalent this condition is, right? So many people have it. And in fact, it's a rising epidemic. That means more and more people are having autoimmune disease. Okay? Now, if more and more people are having autoimmune disease, can it be purely a genetic problem? Can it be purely a genetic problem if more and more people are having it? It cannot be purely genetic, because if it's truly just a genetic disorder, then the incidence of people with autoimmune disease will stay about the same, right? Because that gene pool is being spread evenly, like Down syndrome. There's not like an explosion of Down syndrome. It's just about the same amount of people that have Down syndrome. Does that make sense? So when something is an increasing epidemic, that means there's got to be what? Environmental factors, right? Environmental means things that you're exposed to, things that you eat, stress, things like that. Do we have some degree of control over that? We have some degree of control over dietary, stress management, like that. So that's good news, right? Things that you can control. Now, the problem is that the way that we're addressing autoimmune disease has been wrong. Now, that's a pretty big statement, and I'm going to back it up right now, okay? The way that we're addressing autoimmune disease is wrong, because what we're doing is we're treating the disease at the tissue level where it's happening rather than addressing the real problem. Let me show you one. I just, they can't see behind you. All right. So we have cancer here. Let's just use cancer as an example. So under the umbrella of cancer, you have many different types of cancer, right? You have breast cancer, you have brain cancer, you have lung cancer, skin cancer, right? Colon cancer, on and on and on, right? Now, when you have cancer, who's the specialty that treats cancer? What kind of doctor? Oncology, okay? And rightly so, right? If you have cancer, oncology uses chemo radiation to destroy the cancer cell. So if you have breast cancer, you don't necessarily see the breast doctor, you see the oncologist for the cancer part of it, right? If you have brain cancer, you don't necessarily see the brain doctor, you see the oncologist for the brain part of it. Does that make sense? Right? And that's correct. That's the way you should fix it, because that's the real problem. It's the cancer, but the cancer is happening in different parts of the body. So we don't treat the body part, we treat the cancer. Makes sense, right? Now, when it comes to autoimmune disease, under the umbrella of autoimmune disease, you have many different types of autoimmune disease, like Hashimoto's, like celiac disease, like rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, right? So on and so forth. And when you have Hashimoto's, let's put MS in here for good measure. When you have Hashimoto's, what kind of doctor do you go to? It's a thyroid problem. Now, Hashimoto's autoimmune to thyroid, so what kind of doctor do you go to? Endocrinologist, very good, because they see that as a thyroid problem. When you have rheumatoid arthritis, what kind of doctor do you go to? To the rheumatology, right? They think it's a joint problem. When you have celiac disease, what kind of doctor do you go to? GI guy, right? When you have MS, autoimmune attacking brain, what kind of doctor do you go to? The neurologist, right? Attacking brain, right? So you see, the problem is you're seeing the doctor that's treating the body part. Celiac, you go to the GI guy. Hashimoto, you go to the thyroid guy. MS, you go to the brain guy. But what's the real problem with autoimmune disease? What's the common denominator with all these autoimmune disease? It's the immune system. It's autoimmune, right? That means your immune system's attacking the body part. It's not the body part that's the problem. Just like cancer, it's not the breast that's the problem. It's a cancer growing in the breast. It's not the brain that's the problem. It's a cancer growing in the brain. So when you have autoimmune disease, if you have Hashimoto, your thyroid is not the problem. It's your immune system attacking the thyroid gland. You guys catch that? Should be like a hammer that's dropping, and your jaw should be like, you should be getting it. Light bulb should be turning on, like my head. That's so important because when you have Hashimoto's, what's the treatment for Hashimoto's? You tell me. Thyroid hormone, right? You're taking thyroid hormone. But you have autoimmune attacking the thyroid. So what does thyroid hormone do to stop the immune system from attacking the thyroid gland? Zero, nothing. So essentially, when you have Hashimoto's and you're taking thyroid hormone, you're getting no treatment for the autoimmune part of it. You're getting treatment for the hormone part of it, and really, frankly, a lot of people with Hashimoto don't even need the hormone. Because that's not even the problem. How do I know that? Just look at your thyroid panel. How many of you have Hashimoto's or you have thyroid problem, and your lab test is normal? Your thyroid panel, TSH-T3, is normal, but you still feel like, my energy's not that great, I'm not losing weight. Raise your hand if you have that experience. Your lab test is normal, but you don't feel normal. If your lab test is normal, you don't feel normal, that means that's not the problem. Thyroid hormone ain't your problem, or not the only problem. Does that make sense? If you have celiac disease, what do they tell you? You got to go gluten-free. I'm going to tell you, celiac disease is not a GI problem, folks. Let me repeat that. Celiac disease is not a GI problem. But when you have celiac disease, what kind of doctor do you go to? The GI guy. You see what the problem is? It's an autoimmune problem attacking your intestine. In fact, I'm going to tell you, most people with celiac disease, how many of you here have celiac? In the back row? Okay. I never seen a person with celiac that I manage personally have just a gluten sensitivity problem. I've never seen one. There's nobody with celiac that has just a gluten sensitivity problem. Usually people with celiac will have gut infections. You'll have sensitivity to other food in addition to gluten. You'll have some kind of environmental toxicity issue. You have an immune system imbalance that's driving this autoimmune problem. Nobody with celiac has just a gluten sensitivity problem. So if you're just cutting out gluten as your only treatment for celiac, you're not going to get very far. You guys know what I'm saying? You might feel bad cutting out gluten. You no longer throw up and my tummy doesn't hurt, but you're still brain fog, you're still tired, you're still inflamed, right? So there's a reason for that. And it's connected to this autoimmune problem, but they see that as, you have celiac, you just got to cut out gluten, not take care of your tummy problem. Your joint pain, that's a different problem. Go see the rheumatologist. Oh, you have thyroid problem too? That's a different problem. Go see your endocrinologist, right? That's what's happening. And that's why it's wrong and it doesn't work. You guys jive with that? It makes sense, right? But that's just, common sense is not common in medicine anymore. And that's the problem. You need people to help you make sense of things, okay? I'm sorry for this speaker. Okay, let's try that. So that's a big thing. On your notes here, autoimmune is the umbrella, which includes the various autoimmune diseases. Okay, that's the umbrella. So that's this concept that I talked about. Meaning you got to treat what the real problem is. So if you have thyroid problem or Hashimoto's, don't treat it with a hormone, or don't do that exclusively and ignore all the other stuff. And I'm going to show you what the other stuffs are. Okay, sounds good? Good so far? All right, so the management of autoimmune must focus on the immune system. That's your next blank. Okay. Now, if we're going to talk about how to fix the immune system, we better know how the immune system works. So the immune systems are made up of barriers. So we call that the immune barriers. And think of the barrier as the four walls of your house, so that it keeps the stuff outside, so nothing stuff doesn't just come into your body. So we have the skin as an immune barrier. So you think of skin as part of your immune system, right? It's a mechanical barrier, right? Like the wall, so that the skin doesn't let stuff like bacteria or germs just go straight into your body. So think of skin as an immune barrier. Your lung is a barrier, right? Because your lung is open to the outside world, right? The air you breathe in, the particulate matters that you breathe in, the lung has to filter that. In fact, your lung is filled with lymph nodes. And that's why lung cancers are so deadly, because it has tons of lymph nodes in the lung to spread that cancer. So lung is a very important part of your immune system. And then your gut, obviously, you all know, is a very important part of your immune system. In fact, depends on who you read, up to 70% of your immune system's in the gut. So that's an important barrier. And then your blood-brain barrier. So the blood-brain barrier is that thin mesh of neurons called astrocytes and blood vessels and capillaries that create this thin mesh that separate the brain from the rest of the body. So chemicals and pathogen doesn't just readily go through to the brain, right? Because your brain is mission critical. That's how your body protects itself. So these are all immune barriers. Now these immune barriers are all functionally related, so that when one barrier is compromised, so are the others. So that's your next blank. The immune system is made of barriers that includes the skin, lung, gut, and blood-brain barrier, and that these barriers are functionally related, so that when one is compromised, so will the other. Okay? How does that work in real life? What that means is if I see somebody with a skin problem like eczema, rash, hives, psoriasis, then automatically I'm not looking at the skin. The skin is where you have the symptom, but where is it coming from? Many times it's the gut, because these barriers are related. So when this is busted, I'm looking at somewhere else where it might be happening. So a good example of this is my daughter. Remember the little baby that had an anaphylactic shock with Leaky? That's my daughter. When she was just like 5 months old, she was sitting in a car. I remember she's like doing this number with her leg in a car. I thought, oh, so cute. She's dancing to the music on the radio. She's like doing, and when I pick her out of the car seat, I found blood on the car seat. I was like, where is this coming from? Her leg was itchy. She was scratching her leg against the car seat. She had blood. She has severe skin problem. And of course, later on, we found out that she had dairy sensitivity. That's why she went to the hospital. Does that make sense? So she had gut issue that was showing up as a major skin problem for her. So if anybody has eczema, rash, or hives that comes and goes, we're looking at potential gut issues, okay? And then the other way that this shows up is lung. So anybody with any kind of upper respiratory issue, like asthma, chronic upper respiratory infection, these people are usually, again, I'm asking, okay, what's going on with like what food you're sensitive to. So this is the case with my son. Remember he had a scalding injury and he developed upper respiratory infection. It's because that burn injury caused such severe inflammation, and the inflammation going to have to do my best here. I'm just going to hold it like this. Okay. So, with my son, he has severe upper respiratory issues that was caused by his burn injury, and that burn injury basically triggered leaky gut, and that's why he got respiratory issues. So if you have upper respiratory issues, like, oh yeah, I have asthma forever, or you say that you have, chronic upper respiratory infection. Like every year I get bronchitis or sinusitis or 2 or 3 times. These are signs that you have something else going on. Now we call those infections like lung infections and sinus infections and even UTIs, urinary tract infection. We call that infections in hollow spaces. Okay? Hollow spaces in your body include the sinus cavity, include your gut, right? Your gut is a hollow space, right? It's a tube, hollow space. Your bladder is a hollow space, vaginal tract also, and then your lung. So these hollow spaces are all kind of related in that they're interacting with the external environment, right? Your lung is interacting with the air, your sinus as well, your gut is interacting with the stuff that you put into your mouth. So these hollow spaces, when it becomes inflamed, it'll start to affect the other area. So you'll notice that a lot of people with chronic illness, they'll get this. Oh yeah, I have chronic UTI. Urinary tract infection it never goes away, always. Ongoing, recurrent. That's a problem with that person's immune system, usually related to chronic inflammation that's suppressing the immune system. You'll see people with like, oh yeah, chronic sinus infection, always have phlegm and mucus. That's somebody with infection in the hollow spaces. Eliza, good to see you. So these are things that we look at as a constellation of symptoms. So you don't see the sinus infections, oh you have sinus infection, take antibiotic. Well, how many times can you take antibiotic and still get sinus infection that come back and not start asking the right question about what's causing the sinus infection? Does that make sense? So we got to be able to start understanding this. And a big part of it is because the immune barriers are related. Now, one of the concepts regarding immune barrier is this concept called leaky gut. With leaky gut, you have these barriers. So here's your intestinal tract, cut cross-section like this. These are the cells that line your intestinal tract. And if we magnify this section will look like this. These are the cells that line your intestinal tract. And between the cells, there are proteins that hold the cells together. If this space is busted due to inflammation or autoimmune problems or gut infection, then the space will open up just a little wider. This will allow undigested food protein to leak out of the space. When it does, your immune system will attack this undigested protein, and that causes inflammation. I'm just going to write inflammation, okay? And what this does is it leads to a double whammy of malabsorption and inflammation. And that's going to be your next blank there. By the way, in between, the gut makes up 70% of your immune system, and leaky gut creates a double whammy of malabsorption and inflammation. And more importantly, leaky gut leads to the development of autoimmune disease. Remember, today we're talking about the roadmap to autoimmune disease. And not only that, many of you have multiple autoimmune diseases, more than one. And the rule, not the exception, is that once you get one autoimmune disease, you're likely to develop more autoimmune disease. Your probability of getting more autoimmune disease increases dramatically once you have one. And let me explain to you why that happens. Okay? So there's a concept called self-tolerance. Self-tolerant means how well does your immune system tolerate your own body. Now, that self-tolerance develops from day one that you're born. So from the day that you're born, by passing through your mother's vaginal tract, the birth canal, being born, you get that first swab of bacteria from your mother that inoculates you, that develops that microbiome, which is your probiotic, the beneficial bacteria in your gut. So getting born vaginally is really, really important to development of your immune system. The second thing that has to happen for you to develop the self-tolerance is that you got to be breastfed. So when you get breastfed, the first milk, right, the colostrum, is a transference of the immune system from the mother to the baby. And then as you continue to get breastfed, you're getting that immune system transferring from the mother to the baby, as well as even just having the milk residue on the mother's nipple. That fermented bacteria, kind of like a fermented food, so to speak. So that fermentation of the milk residue on the nipple and the baby sucking on it is getting bacteria from that. So breastfeeding is really important in developing your gut microbiome, which determines your immune function. And the third thing that has to happen is you have to get sick to get an immune system, right? Every time you get sick, what happens? Your immune system develops immunity to that bug that you are sick against, so that you actually develop immunity to it, right? So guess what? If you every time you get an ear infection, you take an antibiotic, your immune system basically doesn't get to learn how to fight it, right? It never got to go to school. Your immune system had to go to school to learn how to fight these pathogens. So if you take an antibiotic, you kind of take away its opportunity to do that. If you have a fever, you take Tylenol to shut down the fever response, you kind of takes away your immune system's ability to fight that infection, or a chance for your immune system to learn how to do that on its own. Does that make sense? So let me give you the scenario. How many people do you think in the United States have been born C-section, never been breastfed, taking a lot of antibiotics and Tylenol every time they're sick as a baby, as a kid? Do you think that's a lot of people or very few people? Raise your hand if you think there's a lot of people. So you wonder why people have no immune system and a lack of self-tolerance. So without self-tolerance, that means your immune system sees your own tissue, like the thyroid gland, and says, I think this is a bacteria. I'm going to go ahead and attack it. That's how you get Hashimoto's. Your immune system sees your small intestinal lining and says, I think this is a virus. I'm going to attack it. That's when you get celiac disease. It sees your brain. I think this is an environmental toxin. I'm going to attack it. You get MS, or neurological autoimmunity. That's what happens. You have no self-tolerance. In fact, let me share this with you. You know, people who get organ transplant, did you know that people who get organ transplants, they have to take immunosuppressant drugs for the rest of their life to maintain that organ rejection? Did you know that? So people don't just get a new organ and everything's good. They have to take immunosuppressant drugs, just like people with autoimmune disease would, to suppress the immune system to prevent organ rejection. When you have autoimmune disease, you have organ rejection against your own organ, not a transplanted one. You have organ rejection against your own organ. So if you have Hashimoto, you kind of have organ rejection against your own thyroid gland. If you have celiac disease, you have organ rejection against your own intestine, like you had organ transplant, but you didn't. What's the bad thing about that? If you have organ rejection against your own organ, you can't go get an organ transplant, because that doesn't solve the problem, does it? Because it's going to reject that anyways. So that's why autoimmune disease is so bad, because you can't really just get an organ transplant. That's why it's such a bad problem. Okay, so self-tolerance. So the question is, if self-tolerance is why you develop this autoimmune disease, then what can we do to improve self-tolerance? Well, it turned out the way you improve self-tolerance is by improving oral tolerance. Oral tolerance. That means mouth. Okay, oral. So what that means, oral tolerance is a concept that explains how does your immune system tolerate the things that you put into your mouth, what you eat, right? So if you are sensitive to every food under the sun, how many of you have tests done and they, oh yeah, you're allergic to everything? Raise your hand, or you're sensitive to everything, multiple foods. If you have sensitivity to multiple foods, what that means is you have low oral tolerance. Your immune system is reacting to the food, not because you're born that way, and not because the food is bad, because your immune system is not working. It's not able to tolerate those foods. Does that make sense? So if you're reacting to everything, don't blame the food. Kind of ask, why is my immune system reacting to everything? Now, sometimes you develop sensitivity to foods that you weren't sensitive to before. How many have that? Like, I used to be able to eat this, I can't eat it now. So if you develop a sensitivity, that means you used to be okay, you're not okay now. So you have to ask, why does it do that, right? Because if you can develop it, guess what you can do? You can undevelop it. You can undevelop a food sensitivity, which is what I try to do with my clients. I try to do with my patients to get them to be able to eat more food. Not go on a super strict diet. I mean, we may have to do that for a short period of time, but the goal is to get you to eat as many different food as possible. Because for me, you know, when I first started this process with my kids, I tested everybody in my family, and we all had like major food sensitivities. But at the time, we were just eating whatever. So we have to go on this very strict diet for like 4 or 5 years. Now, what I've learned is that it doesn't take that long. But for my family, my kids, we have to do that with little kids, cutting out a lot of stuff. It was really tough. So I learned how to cut out stuff, and I can help you with that. But you don't have to cut out forever. But through cutting out these foods, guess what? Now they can tolerate the things that they couldn't tolerate before. Remember Brooke, the one that had anaphylaxis to dairy? She can have dairy without problem now, where she was anaphylactic. Like, what? You can do it. You just got to heal this oral tolerance. So you can change it. Okay? Now, how do you change oral tolerance? Turns out, you improve leaky gut. If you have leaky gut, this process that I talked about where your intestinal lining is busted, and that causes inflammation and malabsorption, you're going to have poor oral tolerance. And if you have poor oral tolerance, you're going to have poor self-tolerance. And if you have poor self-tolerance, you're going to be more likely to have autoimmune disease. Did you guys catch that? Like, just use logic here, okay? You have autoimmune disease. You want to get better. Improve self-tolerance. How do you do that? Improve oral tolerance. How do you do that? Improve leaky gut. There you go. Thank you so much. I mean, really, I told you in the beginning, it's simple. Now, simple doesn't mean it's easy, right? Because everybody's path to this, some people may be really complicated. They take a long time. Like, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I can tell you, though, you got to go through this step to get there. It's kind of like some people take them 6 years to get through college. And other people, 2 years to finish with college, right? It's a process. You got to take all the courses required to get through college. Some people it takes longer, some people it takes shorter, right? Same thing. It's a process. But if you have a roadmap, guess what? Then you know where you're at, right? Oh, I have enough credit to be a sophomore now, so I got 2 more years. Like, you just know what you need to do. But if you didn't have a roadmap, you're like, let me try another pill. Let me try to take this random class over here because it sounds interesting. Well, is that going to get you to your degree? Not necessarily. That's what a lot of people do. You guys kind of resonate with that? Like, yeah, I'm taking a lot of stuff. I don't even know, does this apply to me? Is this good for me? I mean, I read something on the internet. Dr. Google tell me it's good. Well, it's good because of the internet article that's supposed to apply to everybody, but does that apply to you? Not necessarily. So you can take the wrong supplement and actually make yourself worse. How many of you have taken a supplement and feel, I feel like worse? There's a reason for that. Let me share that with you. This is important for you to know. Your immune system has 2 branches. Now, this is that immunology stuff that I'm talking about with Dr. Ari Vishtani. So your immune system has 2 branches, okay? You have T helper 1 system and T helper 2 system. These helper, the H means helper cells. They are specialized white blood cells that actually stimulate immune function. So T helper 1 are your killer cells. These killer cells are the one that kill pathogens like bacteria, virus, candida. And then T helper 2 make antibodies. Antibody is your body's memory system, right? When you get an infection, you develop immunity. Why? Because your body develops these antibodies to remember who the bad guys are, so the next time you get sick, you can mount the response faster, so you don't get as sick. So your body always has these two branches working, and works like a teeter-totter. Sometimes the killer cells are more active, sometimes the antibodies are more active. So the first 3 days of a cold, this is how it works. If you get a cold, the first 3 days, the killer cells are more active. Of course, right? To kill the pathogen. And after the first 3 days, the next 3 days, the antibody cells become more active. To remember who the bad guys are so you can mount the response next time faster. And then after a week, your cold is done, right? That's the normal course of a cold or flu. What happens when you have autoimmune disease, your immune system is stuck at either as Th1 dominant or Th2 dominant. You're just stuck there. So you could be like killer cell, always active, and it doesn't shut off. That's not good. It'd be like you're fighting a war, and the war is over, ceasefire, and you can't stop. You're still shooting. That's not good. And the killer cells are active. Not only is it active, it's active against your own body. Thyroid, Hashimoto, killer cell killing your thyroid gland. Celiac, killer cell killing your small intestinal villi, right? That's one type of autoimmune. The other type of autoimmune is Th2 dominant autoimmune, where these antibody cells are producing too much antibody, so it's triggering chronic inflammation. Typically, when you have high Th2 production, you're going to have chronic allergy symptoms. So these are people who always have allergy issues, always inflamed, sensitive to a lot of food. That's the pattern for those people. So now, every one of you who have autoimmune disease, you're either Th1 dominant autoimmune or you're Th2 dominant autoimmune. That's just the way you are. You're stuck that way now. Once you express the genetic expression of autoimmune, you're stuck that way, and that's why you're autoimmune. So the goal is to bring this into balance like this, not skewed like this. Okay? Now, it turns out that there's supplements that can stimulate the killer cells, and there's supplements that can stimulate the T helper 2 antibody cells. So things like echinacea. Have you guys heard of echinacea? It's like a herb you take over the counter, right? Stuff like for immune. Echinacea stimulate killer cells. Things like maitake mushroom stimulate killer cells. Things like astragalus stimulate killer cells. Bacalin, Chinese skullcap, stimulate killer cells. So there are natural substances that stimulate these killer cells. And there are also things that stimulate the antibody production. Things like pine bark extract. Things like resveratrol, things like typically a flavonoid compound, like royal jelly. You know, flavonoid compounds typically stimulate Th2. Now, let me give you this scenario. If you have autoimmune disease and you're Th1 dominant, let's just say it is, right, for you. You're Th1 dominant, autoimmune, that's the way you are, and you take a supplement like echinacea, because your friend tells you, oh, you have a cold, echinacea is great for colds. So you're already Th1 dominant when the killer cells are too active, and you take echinacea, which stimulates the killer cell even more. Is that good or bad? That's very bad. Muy mal in Spanish. Okay? So that's bad because you're creating more of an imbalance with your immune system by taking a natural supplement. So people think, oh, just because it's natural, it can't hurt me. The worst thing it does is just don't do any good. Absolutely not true. When you have autoimmune, you can easily take a supplement that'll push your immune system in the wrong direction and create an autoimmune flare-up. And that's how you mess somebody up with an autoimmune disease with a supplement. And that's why I'm out here talking to you, because you'll have a lot of naturopaths, nutritionists, natural healthcare practitioners. Yeah, here's a whole bunch of supplements. Take it. It's all good. It's not good. Sorry, I can't answer a question right now. Let me get to it. You can ask me a question afterwards, okay? I'm just going to run out of time. I still have the other side I want to show you. I'm only halfway done. You guys' head exploding yet? Are you okay? You're like, yes? Okay, so is that helpful? Because you need to know that. Because a lot of you are taking a cupboard full of supplements. How many of you have a cupboard full of, come on, you have a lot of supplements, and depends on the day, you take this. Oh, on days I feel like this, I have this. And on days I feel like this, I have this. If you take a cupboard full of supplement, you're kind of just shooting from the hip. You're not being really targeted or specific with it, because you don't have a doctor that's working with you to teach you about these things, and you don't have any tests that tells you about these things. So you're just taking it like Dr. Google tells you to, and that could be a problem if you have autoimmune disease. I'm not saying everybody have a problem, but it could be a problem. And we don't